After 3 years of multiple investigations throughout the Southwest, we picked up a good case in Philadelphia. My team and I were very excited for our upcoming investigation and documentary. Growing up, I was always curious about the places that were abandoned by people with the belief of being evil or cursed. I never believed in superstitious stuff, but I loved to have a camera to record everything in the places people ignored. I was very serious about it, so I opted for it as a career. I decided to be a paranormal investigator and started doing investigations with my team. I did a lot of investigations, from big haunted houses and towns to caves in the forest, but there was nothing that left me amazed. Certainly, some of them had been creepy places to visit, but I wanted to make a documentary about something big and wonderful. The Eastern State Penitentiary was our next destination, and we were all eager to book this place for the next 48 hours. Everybody's familiar with Eastern State Penitentiary, the biggest jailhouse in Philadelphia. We looked it up online and found so many haunted stories. Some of the workers said that when they were cleaning, they were possessed by some kind of force. Some said they heard noises of crying and laughter. We looked through the jail's pictures. The texture and architecture were very impressive. I wondered why a prison was made so beautiful. The answer was as simple as that: to make the prisoners regret what they did. It used to be one of the biggest and most expensive prisons in America, but time changed everything. Its gloomy high stone walls and crumbling corridors certainly made it look haunted. Thousands of criminals were imprisoned and tortured there, and people said maybe their souls were still bound there. Something happened and they had to close the prison. It was left in ruins with haunting rumors. It made me more interested in its story. After all, what happened? Why did they have to close the biggest prison in America? I was so eager to know what all the fuss was about. Personally, I did not have high hopes to get a chance to investigate and even make a documentary on the Eastern State Penitentiary. But when we got it, I felt so fortunate because I was so eager to learn everything I could about the terror within the walls of this prison. I was sure this documentary would be the best of our careers. But if I had known it would be the biggest downfall of my life, I would have never gone there. My best friend and partner Bernard and my cousin Danny decided to also explore paranormal locations around America and document our discoveries. Usually it's only me and Bernard, but Danny has always been interested in my work. Whenever he got the chance, he used to come with me and be a part of our discoveries. After some time, he was practically part of the team, as he had been on so many of our investigations, and we accepted it. I recalled a time when we were kids. We were both mischievous ones. We used to do everything we were not allowed to do. We never believed in these kinds of paranormal things, and we always enjoyed exploring haunted locations, from venturing into the haunted mansions of amusement parks to the cursed houses of towns on Halloween. We were always ready to do anything adventurous. We had saved several documentaries of our adventures in different haunted places we went to during our teenage years to look back on. When I told Danny that we had the chance to explore the famous Eastern State Penitentiary, he was beyond ecstatic. Of course, I knew he would come, even if he had to drop work that day. We were so excited for the experience. If only we knew what was waiting for us. Nonetheless, we reached our location with full enthusiasm. We had high hopes that this new discovery would help us advance in our careers. Bernard and Danny set up cameras throughout the prison and microphones on the main floor. The jail was so big, it took us several cameras to cover it. Of course, it gave off a terrifying vibe and something else I just couldn't place my finger on. I didn't pay too much attention to it. We spent the whole day setting up everything and left with big hopes for the next day. With our little crew, we went in on these investigations solo for 24 hours. We reached the location with the hopes of making the biggest discovery of our careers. Danny stepped out of the van to meet the property supervisor, Charlie. We just had to get the keys to start the investigation. I was somehow feeling a little different about this discovery. I felt like something big was about to happen, and I hoped for something good. I was lost in my thoughts when I heard Danny and the supervisor talking. The looks on their faces were not great. The supervisor looked towards the van and then back at Danny.
I was expecting a big group of you investigators to explore the whole prison,
the man said, frustrated.
No, sir. It's only me and 2 others for this tour,
Danny said. The supervisor gave him the impression that he was unbelievable. The man walked over and stared at us with a strange look. We were all confused at this point.
Hold on a minute here. How are you going to explore this big old prison with only the 3 of you?
The man asked. We explore solo, individually, is how we usually work, I explained and smiled to ease the conversation. The man wasn't even listening to what we were saying. He waved Danny over as if he was about to whisper something.
I don't know what kind of tomfoolery you and your friends are up to, but this place is nothing you want to mess around with,
he said quietly, afraid someone would hear him. Even though we could barely hear him, it just made me furious. I couldn't understand what his deal was. Why was he getting so much into our work? Bernard and I exchanged glances, and before I could say anything, I saw Danny with the most annoying expressions. Honestly, I was pretty pissed too at that point.
I understand the danger this place carries, but we're prepared to deal with the paranormal entities this prison holds,
Danny tried to tell him as calmly as he could. That was the whole point. We were there for the investigation of anything paranormal. So why was this man bothered so much? Even after we had explained everything to him, he just looked at us as if we had chosen this on our own. Shaking his head, he finally handed over the keys to Danny.
I wish you boys luck, and I hope you know, whenever anyone goes lurking around in this hellhole prison, they never make it out alive,
he said, as if he was trying to tell us something or warn us that we still had time to flee. Danny was very close to lashing out, but stopped himself. He took the keys from the guy, handed him a bag of money, and walked back towards the van. He had this annoyed expression on his face, which was rare as he had always been a bright and excited person. Bernard opened the door for Danny as he entered. We took out the monitors and started setting up all the equipment inside. So, tell me, what's up with this guy? And what's with all that haunted crap he's talking about? I asked him.
I don't know. He seems crazy,
Danny said. He shrugged and shook his head as if it were unimportant. We forgot about it and got to work because we had better plans for the day. We can't let some crazy supervisor ruin it. We had to make this documentary as big as we could. We all pulled up to the driveway. Now the thing was, who was going in first? Whenever we 3 went for an investigation, the biggest problem was that everyone wanted to go in first.
I'm going in first since the last 2 times it was you both,
Bernard said. Danny and I sighed. We accepted it and began to set Bernard up with the camera gear. Danny handed him a walkie-talkie as Bernard was beaming and teasing us. We all looked towards the main door and I literally got chills. The place had a very strange and unwelcoming vibe. Just before Bernard walked through the door, a strange old man bumped into him as he was emerging from the bushes. The bump was strong, but Bernard somehow managed to keep himself from falling. Before Bernard could say anything, the old man yelled,
"If I were you, I would turn around and get as far away from this evil cursed place while you still could."
Bernard tried to get the man away from him, but the man was looking at him with the expression of someone expecting something bad to happen. The man just kept spitting nonsense, standing close to Bernard. He talked about how the jail was bad and cursed and that no one could survive in this evil place. Bernard pushed him away and yelled at him to get lost in order to make him flee. The man began walking backwards, still yelling.
"I was once locked up and served my time here, but this place is evil and bad, and you will go mad in this place."
The dots were connected. He was just a mad former prisoner who was traumatized by serving there. That's why he was spouting all this nonsense. Maybe he was having flashbacks of his punishments or something. Bernard was looking lost and was in deep thought. I was watching the whole scene but could not understand what was happening. "What's going on out there, Bernard?" I asked.
My bad, fellas. There was some homeless guy talking about the time he served here and some superstitious crap.
Bernard said, chuckling as if he had had the lamest encounter ever with someone.
We don't care! Go inside!
Danny yelled. Danny was starting to get impatient as always. He couldn't wait to start the investigation. He snatched the walkie-talkie from me and yelled at Bernard, which made me and Bernard laugh. He directed him to the main door to the prison facility.
Yes, sir,
Bernard said and did a mocking salute as he walked towards the main door. He opened the big door, which made this scary, creepy noise like it had not been opened for a very long time. Bernard looked towards the big jail and felt excited. He was deciding on where to start first.
Man, hurry up!
Danny shouted.
Impatient, aren't we?
Bernard said, laughing as Danny groaned. Yeah, let's see one of the greatest prisons in America, I said, laughing. As Bernard stepped into the east wing of the prison, he felt a chill that made him shiver. The temperature was somehow low inside the prison. He felt strange, as if someone was watching him.
Damn, that was a cold chill,
Bernard laughed nervously. He ignored it and walked inside. It was still a breathtaking view. He looked over the big, stark cells and thought about how criminals were kept inside them, sometimes for almost their whole lives. He was looking here and there when suddenly he felt like he was being watched again. He looked up and noticed a figure. He rubbed his eyes to see if he was hallucinating, but the shadowy figure was running down from the top floor and disappeared into the corner of a cell. He stood for a moment, frozen, but collected himself. Bernard grabbed his walkie-talkie nervously. His hands were trembling because this had never happened before, despite the fact that we had conducted dozens of investigations.
I think there's something down here, fellas,
Bernard whispered nervously. We tried to calm him down and assured him it was nothing. It was strange. Bernard was not scared easily. However, he continued and walked ahead when suddenly Danny jumped in his seat and saw something moving down the corridor through the monitor. What's the matter? I asked him, but he grabbed the walkie-talkie from me hurriedly.
I don't know if you can see it, but there's something in there with you, Bernard,
Danny said, holding the walkie-talkie. Bernard was sweating at this point. We could see him shaking. He took out the water bottle from his bag and drank some water to calm himself down. He sighed and walked towards the end of the cell. Suddenly, he heard a noise. He stopped walking and felt goosebumps all over his body. Unwillingly, he looked up. What he saw made his eyes go wide. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. There were 10 shadows staring right at him. What were they? He could not understand it. They had glowing red eyes, like something was burning inside of them. Their appearance was strange and scary. They were big, scary big. But still, he could not understand their form. They were black with no face, but still red, scary eyes. Bernard closed his eyes, shaking his head, and looked up again. They were still there, looking at him intensely, and he couldn't even scream. He decided to run towards the main door to try and get out of the cell as quick as he could. He could hear footsteps approaching. He wondered if it was a prank or if someone was scaring him for fun. He didn't have the courage to look back, but he knew the monsters were chasing him. Suddenly, the lights began to switch on and off. He was running so fast without looking and tripped over something. He fell and his walkie-talkie dropped, scattering across the floor. He cursed, holding his leg, and rushed to get the flashlight out from his bag. After seconds of struggling, he shakingly took out his flashlight from the bag and turned it on. With a heavy sigh, he turned around, and nothing was there. In a second, he felt dust blowing towards him. He closed his eyes and covered his face with his hands. He opened his eyes and saw himself completely covered in dust.
I don't know who's in here, but you better stop messing around with me,
Bernard yelled. He moved his flashlight in all directions, but still there was nothing. He stood up and wiped the dust from his face and clothes when he heard laughing. One voice turned into more. It was an evil laugh, scary, as if it was enjoying everything that was happening.
What's going on in there, Bernard? Is everything okay?
I yelled into the walkie-talkie worriedly, as we could not hear him after he dropped it.
Yeah, I think it's just that homeless guy messing around with me, Bernard said. Wait, I'll look into it, Danny said, turning the monitor into a full body image. There's no one, Danny said. He turned the monitor in different directions when he suddenly stopped on the top floor. A black figure was looking down at Bernard, who was moving his flashlight around and searching for the light board. Oh hell, who even is that? I muttered. Bernard, there's a figure just above your head. Get out of there, Danny yelled into the walkie-talkie. On hearing that, Bernard aimed his flashlight above his head. He looked up and saw a figure looking down at him. He could see the figure was scary, but he couldn't understand what the monster was. It was big and black just like before, but it had no arms or legs. Bernard looked closer and saw that this time it formed a mouth which was now open with large, sharp teeth like a vampire or something, covered in blood. His red, burning eyes were like fire, ready to set Bernard alight. Bernard was shaking so much, but he couldn't move. It was as if his body was not under his own control. He opened his mouth to say something, but his voice died in his mouth. He couldn't believe his eyes. Was it a nightmare? If it was, he was hoping to wake up, but it was reality. He could feel the air around him becoming more and more chilly. He was feeling cold, as if the temperature had dropped to below zero. When he heard all of the cell doors from the top floor open, his hands froze. He saw prisoners walking out from the large cells on the top floor. He felt as if time had ventured backwards to when prisoners had been kept there and tortured. He was sure they were not human. Humans don't sound like this. It was something evil that was ready to tear Bernard apart. He could tell by the looks on their faces that they had been anticipating this moment for quite some time. Is this some kind of joke? What are they? I said. What's happening? Danny yelled. We were still trying to make contact with Bernard, but we couldn't hear him. We could hear noises from his side, but nothing was clear. Bernard was trying to open the main door when he felt something grab him from behind. He stopped struggling and his body went numb. He realized he could not leave the cell anymore. He was going to be imprisoned there, just like the demons that were tormenting him. Bernard! What happened? Say something! I yelled. The walkie-talkie went dead. As we looked up, the monitor screens went black. What the heck? Danny started checking the wires in the setup. But everything's fine here, he said, still unsure of what was wrong. I grabbed my gear and tried to set it up, but Danny stopped me. What the hell are you doing? He yelled. I'm about to go save my friend! I yelled back, but Danny shook his head in disbelief. Listen, I'm sorry, but he's gone, man. We don't even know if he's alive in there, he said. He was trying to make me understand that I was not looking at it straight, but I didn't pay him any attention. I just hoped it was some kind of joke and everything would turn out fine in the end. I got myself set up and opened the van door, venturing out. Try to get the monitors back on! I'm gonna go rescue Bernard! I yelled. Danny was grabbing his head in frustration as I ran towards the main door. I knew it was a bad decision, but I wasn't gonna leave my friend to die alone inside that evil prison. We were together in every investigation, and nothing will ever change that. After several tries and getting things set up again, Danny was able to reach a signal and got the monitors to come back on. What he saw shook him. He cried and yelled helplessly. Ah! Please!